Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into some absolutely paradigm-shifting ideas from the philosopher Byung-Chul Han. We're going to unpack his pretty chilling analysis of why our modern reality, this world of endless digital connection and infinite choices, feels so incredibly exhausting. Let's just jump right in, because what we're about to uncover is going to fundamentally change how you look at your smartphone, your career, and honestly, even your own desires. So think about this paradox for a second. If we are so incredibly free today, why are we all so chronically exhausted? It's kind of the defining mystery of the modern Western world. We live in an era of literally unprecedented personal liberation. I mean, you can be whatever you want, say whatever you want, connect with anyone on the planet instantly. And yet, our society is dealing with this massive epidemic of burnout, depression, anxiety. If we're entirely free, why are we so universally tired? Well, this is exactly the puzzle Byung-Chul Han is trying to solve. Han comes up with a pretty radical answer. He argues that we actually haven't eliminated exploitation in the modern world at all. We've just internalized it. He says the achievement subject, that's us by the way, exploits itself until it burns out. We've basically taken exploitation and dressed it up in this highly deceptive, incredibly appealing disguise of self-realization and freedom. Because you see, when you believe you're working entirely for your own brand, your own goals, optimizing your own life, you will push yourself way, way harder than any external boss ever could. Part 1, Discipline versus Achievement, and how power has fundamentally shifted. To really understand where all this exhaustion is coming from, we have to look at how the architecture of power has mutated over the last century or so. For a long time, we relied on the philosopher Michel Foucault's model to understand societal control. Foucault described a disciplinary society. This was built on prohibition. Think factories, physical prisons, strict, rigid rules. But Han points out a massive paradigm shift. We've actually moved into what he calls the achievement society. We aren't being held back by strict physical boundaries anymore. Instead, we're being constantly driven forward by endless possibility in this relentless pressure to achieve. The core verb of our entire society has shifted. It used to be that an external authority used negative power to tell us what we should or must do. Now, we are driven by the positive power of what we can achieve. Yes, we can. You can be anything, right? The architecture has gone from physical walls to digital networks. We've transitioned from being subjects of obedience to being these mini entrepreneurs of ourselves. And the most dangerous part? The violence went from being direct and visible to being completely invisible and internalized. We are now playing the role of both the master and the slave. And that brings us to a foundational concept in Han's philosophy, the violence of positivity. When society constantly bombards you with the message that everything is possible, it creates this systemic aggression against your very real, natural human limitations. It masquerades as empowerment, but is actually incredibly violent to the human psyche. Han argues that things like neuronal burnout, ADHD, and depression aren't just individual medical failings. No, they are the intended logical outcomes of a system that relentlessly demands that you must always be able to perform. Which leaves us to part 2, the digital panopticon and voluntary surveillance. So you might be wondering, how exactly is this endless loop of self-exploitation monitored today? If we don't have guards and we don't have watchtowers, what's keeping us in line? Welcome to the digital panopticon. It's a system of surveillance where we don't just, reluctantly tolerate being watched. We voluntarily expose ourselves. We enthusiastically collaborate in our own monitoring. We have essentially entered an architecture of total transparency, where the traditional idea of a prison has been entirely turned inside out. The contrast in how these two types of prisons function is pretty wild to think about. Jeremy Bentham designed the original Panopticon prison back in the 18th century. It relied on physical walls, isolating the inmates, forcing them into total silence, and relying heavily on external coercion. But the digital Panopticon thrives on the exact opposite. It runs on hypercommunication, voluntary sharing, and our own deep psychological need to be seen. In Bentham's physical prison, inmates desperately wanted to hide from the guard's gaze. But in the digital one, we are absolutely terrified of not being seen by the algorithm. Han captures this dynamic perfectly. He says the smartphone is a digital confessional and Facebook is the global synagogue. Think about it. We carry around our own tracking devices. We track our daily steps, our sleep cycles, our fleeting thoughts, our exact locations. We are basically offering up our inner lives as data. We are monitoring ourselves far more thoroughly and far more intimately than any secret police in human history ever could have dreamed of. Part 3, Psychopolitics and Algorithmic Control. This voluntary surrender of our data isn't just harmless oversharing, though.
It actually fuels a new, totally invisible dictatorship that Han calls psychopolitics. Power has evolved. It's moved away from Foucault's idea of biopolitics, which, again, was about controlling the physical body, into a system that directly colonizes our psychological desires. It doesn't want to lock up your body anymore. It wants to manage your mind, capture your attention, and steer your emotional impulses.
This is exactly how big data acts as the ultimate psychopolitical instrument. It is not just passively watching what you do. It's actively steering you. By accumulating these massive psychographic profiles based on your likes, your scrolls, even how long you hesitate on a picture, algorithms can actually predict your behavior before you even make a conscious choice. Through micro-targeting, it manipulates your desires on a pre-reflexive, totally subconscious level. It serves you the exact right piece of content or the perfect product at the exact millisecond your psychological defenses are calibrated to receive it. Which leads to this devastatingly brilliant realization. Auto-exploitation, meaning exploiting yourself, is vastly more efficient than being exploited by others. Why? Because it comes with a feeling of absolute freedom. Because this algorithmic steering masquerades as personalized convenience, as something curated just for you, as pure self-expression, it completely neutralizes your desire to rebel. You can't fight a dictator that feels like your own free will. It is genuinely the most efficient form of control ever invented. Finally, Part 4. Contemplative resistance, or how we actually fight back. So, the million-dollar question, how do we fight back? How do you resist an invisible algorithmic dictatorship that genuinely feels like freedom? Well, Han argues that we absolutely do not need another mindfulness app or some new productivity hack. Those are just more tools of the achievement society tricking us, again. Instead, we need a radical shift toward what he calls contemplative resistance, and it's built on 3 distinct actions. Basically, we have to actively reclaim the human mystery, first by disconnecting to allow for deep boredom, literally just letting your mind wander without a screen feeding it a constant drip of dopamine. Second, by claiming your right to intransparency. You have to refuse the societal mandate to just bury your soul in your data for digital metrics and likes. Keep some things hidden. And third, we must seek genuine, unquantifiable human connections. We need to engage with people and ideas that cannot be cleanly categorized or optimized by a tech company's algorithm. We have to violently protect our inner lives. Ultimately, Han is telling us that in an age where literally everything is data, where everything is measured, tracked, and exploited, the absolute most powerful act of rebellion against the digital panopticon is simply refusing to be calculated. So as you step away from this explainer today and look down at your glowing screen, ask yourself, will you have the courage to remain a mystery to the algorithm?
Have you ever looked at a completely blank Sunday calendar? No alarm set, no professional obligations, literally no emails that urgently need your reply.
Well, that's the mythical free Sunday.
Exactly, the mythical free day. And yet, by like 2 in the afternoon, you feel this crushing, bone-deep sense of exhaustion.
Yeah, just totally drained for no logical reason.
Right. You might be sitting on your couch, supposedly relaxing, but there's this low-grade, persistent hum of anxiety in the background, a quiet voice whispering that you should be doing a load of laundry or listening to an educational audiobook or maybe meal prepping for the week.
We're doing some intense, highly structured recovery protocols so you can hit the ground running on Monday.
Yes, exactly. Why does total freedom in the modern world so often feel like, just another high-stakes task that we're somehow failing at?
It's a huge question.
It is. And welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to really unpack this exact feeling of modern exhaustion.
We're going to examine the hidden architecture behind it all.
We are. We're doing this through the lens of philosopher Byung-Chul Han, specifically diving into his really illuminating concepts of psychopolitics and the digital panopticon.
Which are just fascinating ideas.
They really are. We are pulling from a whole stack of analyses and philosophical essays today, looking at a profound evolution in how power operates over us.
Right. It's a shift away from physical control and directly into the management of our minds and our desires.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because I want you, the listener, to imagine something. Imagine if the prison bars weren't made of iron, but they were made of your own ambition.
Oh, that's a chilling way to put it.
And the warden was just your own reflection staring back at you from a smartphone screen.
That really sets the stage perfectly because the exhaustion you're describing, it's arguably the defining psychological condition of the 21st century.
It really feels like it. It's everywhere.
It is. We live in an era where the traditional, heavy-handed structures of oppression have largely dissolved in the West.
Right. We have unprecedented mobility, access to information, personal autonomy, all of that.
Exactly. Yet, instead of feeling liberated by this freedom, a massive portion of the population is just experiencing profound burnout.
So why is that? Why the paradox?
Well, Han suggests this paradox exists because the fundamental nature of power itself has mutated. Power doesn't need to force us to do things anymore.
Wait, it doesn't?
No, it has figured out how to make us desperately want to do them.
Okay, that is wild. So it seems like to understand how power operates today, we have to look at how it operated in the past as a baseline, right?
Yes, definitely. Historically, power was incredibly obvious. It was a physical constraint.
You could actually see the person or the institution that was bossing you around.
Right. Society used to be organized around what the philosopher Michel Foucault categorized as biopolitics and the disciplinary society.
Biopolitics, okay.
Yeah, and power in that era was almost entirely negative. It operated through a strict vocabulary of prohibition and coercion.
Meaning it was all about what you couldn't do.
Exactly. The core operating verb of the disciplinary society was should, or more accurately, must.
Like you must obey the law.
You should not step out of line. You must follow the rigid schedule. And that must was enforced by physical architecture.
Right. Society was essentially just a series of distinct walled enclosures. You went from the family home to the school, and then from the school to the barracks, and then from the barracks to the factory.
You knew exactly where the boundaries were because you could literally touch the brick walls that contained you.
You could see the factory foreman or the schoolmaster or the prison guard. It was frontal and visible.
And because those boundaries were so physical and clearly defined, the people who didn't fit into this societal model were also really clearly categorized.
Right. The disciplinary society produced distinct categories of outsiders.
Exactly. If you broke the rules of should, you were labeled a criminal and put in a prison.
And if you couldn't conform to the rational order, you were labeled a madman and put in an asylum.
Han calls this an immunological age. Society operated very much like a biological immune system.
Oh, I see. Like identifying foreign bodies.
Yes, foreign bodies that didn't conform to the structure, and it would physically expel or isolate them to protect the whole.
But Han argues we don't live in that disciplinary society anymore, right? The factory whistle doesn't dictate our lives the way it did 50 years ago.
Right. At a certain level of productivity, that negative power just becomes inefficient.
Which brings us to Han's model. He calls our current era the achievement society, right?
Yes, the achievement society. And we've moved from that immunological age into a neurological age.
And the defining shift here is from the verb should to the verb can.
Exactly. Power now operates through possibility, freedom, and motivation.
We traded the factory and the prison for the gym, the glass office building, and digital networks.
Right. But here is the thing.
Wait, let me push back on this framing for a second, though.
Sure, go ahead.
Because Han calls this a form of control, but isn't freedom a good thing? I mean, we traded the assembly line for a laptop on a beach, society telling you, yes, you can, which was literally Obama's campaign slogan, right?
Right, it was.
That feels inherently empowering. It removes the ceiling. So how can the transition to can possibly be viewed as a negative form of control?
It removes the ceiling, yes, but it also crucially removes the floor.
What do you mean by that?
When power operates through negative coercion, like when a factory boss tells you to pull a lever for 8 hours, there's a distinct, undeniable boundary to your exploitation.
Okay, right. Once the whistle blows at 5 o'clock, the should is satisfied.
Exactly. You go home, your physical labor ends, and your mind is your own again.
The limit of your exhaustion is defined by the physical limits of your body.
And the legal limits of your shift. But when the governing verb becomes can, that dynamic changes completely.
Because can doesn't have a whistle.
Can has absolutely no natural limit. The possibility for achievement is infinite.
Oh, I see. So this infinite nature of can is what drives this constant humming anxiety we talked about at the start.
Exactly. This is what Han refers to as positive violence.
Positive violence. That sounds like an oxymoron.
It does, but it's a systematic, relentless aggression against natural human limitations. It's just disguised perfectly as empowerment.
So positive violence doesn't look like a guard with a baton.
No, it looks like a motivational poster. Or a notification on your wrist reminding you that you're only 2,000 steps away from your daily goal.
Oh, wow. So because the horizon of can is endless, it turns freedom itself into a form of psychological coercion.
You can always be fitter. You can always be more productive. You can always learn a new language on your commute.
You can always build a better personal brand.
Right. The compulsion to achieve turns into this infinite loop that you can never, ever actually complete.
Which means the enforcer of this limitless work isn't a boss or a dictator anymore.
No. Who do you think is enforcing it?
The enforcer is sitting inside our own heads. We are doing it to ourselves.
Exactly. Han makes a really vital distinction here between allo-exploitation and auto-exploitation.
Allo-exploitation meaning exploitation by the other, right?
Right. In Foucault's disciplinary society, the worker was exploited by someone else, the capitalist, the factory owner.
But in the achievement society, we have internalized that capitalist mandate.
We exploit ourselves. We are the master and the slave in one body. That is auto-exploitation.
And we see this literally everywhere in how we approach our daily routines now.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, let's look at how we treat our own bodies and our leisure time. People don't just go for a casual run through the park anymore.
No, they track it on a GPS app. They measure their VO2 max.
They compare their pace against a digital leaderboard of their peers. They optimize their recovery with specific macronutrient ratios and cold plunges.
It's relentless.
We manage our entire lives like we are the CEO of a startup called You Incorporated.
Yes, the entrepreneur of the self.
We don't even just sleep anymore. We use wearable technology that gives us a literal sleep school in the morning.
Right, you wake up and check if you were good at sleeping.
It's insane. We are optimizing our hobbies, our LinkedIn profiles, our diets. The self is no longer just a subject experiencing the world.
It has become a project to be endlessly refined and optimized.
But wait, why is this so much more efficient for the system?
Because it is accompanied by the feeling of freedom. A factory worker in the disciplinary society knows they're being exploited.
Right, they feel the oppression.
But a modern knowledge worker, burning the midnight oil to build their personal brand, believes they're simply realizing their ultimate potential.
They push themselves to the brink completely willingly.
They believe it is for their own good. Power is most effective, not when it forces you to act against your will, but when it shapes your will so that you desire exactly what the system needs from you.
That is deeply unsettling, and I imagine the psychological toll of this is just massive.
It is devastating, because think about when You Incorporated has a bad quarter.
Right, when you simply can't keep up with the infinite demands of optimization.
In the old disciplinary system, if the factory conditions were terrible, you could unionize. You could strike against the boss.
You could point a finger at the institution and say, "You are failing me."
Exactly. There was an external oppressor to rebel against, which actually preserved your inner sense of self-worth.
But when you are the CEO of your own life, failure is entirely, exclusively your own fault.
Who do you write a complaint letter to?
You can only blame yourself.
And that externalization of blame in the past preserved the ego. Now, when you fail, it's a personal, moral failing.
This leads to what Han calls a profound crisis of freedom, doesn't it?
Yes, in the disciplinary society, the ultimate rebel was the criminal or the madman, the person who consciously rejected the rules of should.
But in the achievement society.
The defining illnesses are depression, anxiety, ADHD, and burnout.
So these aren't just individual medical failures.
No, Han argues they're the systemic outcomes of a society that demands we always be able to.
Burnout is literally the soul overheating from the friction of limitless self-expectation.
Exactly. The depressive individual isn't rebelling against a boss. They are collapsing under the weight of their own infinite expectations.
They're entirely exhausted by the relentless demand to constantly become themselves.
It is a tragedy of self-realization.
The soul overheating from limitless self-expectation? That is such a visceral, haunting image.
It really captures the modern condition.
But to facilitate all this endless self-optimization, to constantly prove that we are achieving, we need an audience, right?
Yes, we need a stage.
Where is all this auto-exploitation actually taking place? Because it's not happening in a vacuum.
No, it's happening on the digital networks we inhabit every single day.
Okay, so let's transition into that, because to understand the architecture of this digital stage, we have to talk about the Panopticon.
Yes, we have to look at Jeremy Bentham.
So for you listening, in the late 18th century, this philosopher Jeremy Bentham designed a theoretical prism called the Panopticon.
And the design was just revolutionary in its psychological cruelty.
The physical layout is brilliant, but terrifying.
It's a circular prison.
Reveille, really.
Yes, a large circle.
The inmates are housed in individual cells around the outer perimeter, and in the very center of the circle is a single watchtower.
And the crucial design element is the lighting.
Right. The watchtower has blinds and is kept completely dark, while the outer cells are backlit by large windows.
So the guard in the central tower can see into any cell at any time, but the inmates can never, ever see into the tower.
They have no idea if the guard is looking at them or if the guard is even in there at all.
Exactly. And the psychological mechanism at play there is the internalization of the gaze.
Because the inmates never know exactly when they're being watched, they have to assume they are always being watched.
Right. The uncertainty of the surveillance forces the prisoner to modify their own behavior.
The guard doesn't need to be physically present in the cell with the con. The prisoner polices themselves.
The Panopticon forced isolated inmates into silence, obedience, and total behavioral conformity.
And Foucault used this as the ultimate metaphor for how the disciplinary society controlled its citizens. Right?
He did. It was the perfect model of biopolitics.
But Han points out a massive divergence here, because we don't live in Bentham's stone panopticon anymore.
No, we live in the digital panopticon.
And the mechanics have completely inverted. In Bentham's prison, visibility was a punishment.
Yes, the inmates were isolated in cells, forbidden from communicating with one another, forced into the light against their will.
But in the digital panopticon, we aren't isolated at all. We are hyper-networked.
We aren't forced into silence. We are actively, relentlessly encouraged to communicate.
To share, to post, to tweet, to upload. Visibility isn't a punishment anymore. It is our deepest desire.
That contrast really reveals the genius of psychopolitics.
Here's where it gets really interesting. In the digital panopticon, we are both the inmates and the guards.
We actively collaborate in our own surveillance.
We don't surrender our personal data under duress. The intelligence agencies or big tech corporations don't have to break down our doors to pry our information from us.
No, we offer it up voluntarily. Constantly.
Out of this profound inner need for validation, it is a stunning historical reversal.
It really is, especially when you look at recent history.
Right, like look at the 1980s in Germany, for example.
Oh, the census protests.
Yes. There were massive, furious protests over a basic national census.
Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets.
They were terrified of a surveillance state simply because the government wanted to know their profession and marital status.
Fast forward a few decades.
And we voluntarily upload our exact GPS coordinates in real time. Our resting heart rates, the intimate details of our romantic relationships.
Our unfiltered political views, pictures of our children.
All to billionaire-owned tech platforms. And we don't just do it willingly, we do it for free, hoping someone will notice.
Every technology of power historically brings forth its own devotional objects.
Devotional objects, like religious items.
Exactly. Items that stabilize dominion and subjugation by embedding them into daily ritual. Han describes the smartphone as the ultimate modern devotional object.
He compares it to a digital rosary, right?
He does. It functions much like a rosary.
A digital rosary. That just elevates the smartphone from a mere tool to an actual object of religious submission.
The behavioral parallels are just striking. Think about it. A rosary is a handheld device used for monitoring oneself, for regular confession.
Seeking grace and connection to a higher power.
The smartphone functions identically in the achievement society, but the higher power is the algorithm.
Oh, wow. So social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they serve as the new global churches.
Where we go to perform our daily rituals of confession.
Which makes the like button the digital amen.
Precisely the metaphor Han uses.
That is so dark. When we click like, we are bowing down to the order of domination.
We are confessing our inner lives, our preferences, and our fears, all just seeking the absolution of attention.
And the like button is a brilliant piece of psychological engineering because it provides a randomized variable reward.
The exact same mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive.
It trains us to constantly return to the confessional booth, offering up more and more of our inner lives in exchange for a brief dopamine hit of validation.
This relentless drive to share everything brings us to Han's concept of transparency.
Right, transparency. In modern political and corporate discourse, transparency is universally championed as an absolute good.
Everyone wants it.
We demand transparency in government, we demand transparent supply chains, transparent relationships.
But Han views transparency not as a democratic ideal, but as a totalitarian neoliberal ideology.
A totalitarian ideology, because we assume transparency means honesty or accountability, but Han defines it differently.
He does. Transparency in this context is the demand that absolutely everything, every thought, every fleeting emotion, every private action be turned inside out.
Transformed into quantifiable data and made visible to the network.
It is the complete eradication of the private sphere.
I can hear the common defense to this, though. People listening might be thinking, well, if you have nothing to hide, why do you care if everything is transparent?
The classic argument.
Right. If I'm not committing a crime, why should I care if algorithms know what kind of shoes I buy or what podcasts I listen to?
The danger of total transparency isn't just about hiding criminality. It's about the homogenization of human behavior.
The homogenization, like making everyone the same.
Exactly. When everything is illuminated, there is no room for deviation, for experimentation, or for genuine eccentricity.
It forces total conformity.
Because in a system driven by data and capital, communication needs to travel as fast as possible to be monetized.
And secrets, mysteries, ambiguities, they slow things down.
They are speed bumps. Deep internal reflection slows down the flow of information.
So the society of transparency demands that we smooth out all human complexity.
It demands we translate the messy, unquantifiable nature of the human soul into pure, frictionless data points that can be easily categorized and sold.
Which transitions us perfectly from the voluntary surveillance of the digital panopticon into the active weaponization of that surveillance.
This is where things get really manipulative.
We turn ourselves inside out, offering up our digital amens, converting our lives into frictionless data. What happens to all that transparent data we are voluntarily uploading?
This is where big data emerges not just as a storage system, but as a tool of psychopolitics.
So if Foucault's biopolitics was about disciplining the physical body, putting it in a specific place at a specific time,
Han's psychopolitics is about molding the mind.
big data is a highly efficient, almost invisible psychopolitical instrument.
It moves power from the realm of observation into the realm of prediction and active steering.
It's not just a giant passive filing cabinet of our tweets and purchase histories.
Not at all. By analyzing our clicks, our likes, our dwell times on a specific video.
Even the micro movements of our mouse, right?
Yes, algorithms can acquire comprehensive knowledge of our psychological makeup.
They can recognize patterns in our behavior, our anxieties, and our desires that we aren't even consciously aware of ourselves.
And that predictive power is where free will begins to dissolve.
Because the algorithms don't just know what you did yesterday.
They use aggregate data from millions of similar profiles to predict what you will do tomorrow.
It predicts human behavior before the subject is even conscious of their own intent.
It can map the subtle shifts in your digital footprint that indicate you are feeling vulnerable or lonely or politically agitated.
And then it alters your digital environment accordingly.
Exactly. The environment curation is the steering mechanism.
In a disciplinary society, the state forces you to do what it wants at the barrel of a gun.
But in a psychopolitical society, the algorithm manages your digital environment so seamlessly that you want to do what the system needs you to do.
You think you are making a free, conscious choice to buy a specific supplement, or vote for a specific candidate, or binge watch a certain show.
But your environment has been so perfectly curated by predictive data that your choice was a foregone conclusion.
Your desires were managed. That is terrifying.
And this management extends into profound economic and social categorization.
Right, the sources get into this. Big data creates a deeply stratified society, but the stratification is invisible.
Consider the data brokers, massive companies like Axiom that operate largely in the background.
They build robust profiles on hundreds of millions of citizens.
They synthesize your public records, your credit history, your web browsing, your location data.
And they literally sort humanity into distinct economic categories. The categorization itself is chilling.
What terms do they use again?
These brokers identify high-value individuals and label them with terms like shooting stars.
Right, shooting stars.
These are people who are dynamic, have high disposable incomes, maybe they fit a demographic that advertisers covet.
But what happens to the people with low scores?
People with poor credit, low economic mobility, or erratic employment histories, they are literally categorized in these databases as waste.
Waste. It's dehumanizing.
Completely. And Han uses this reality to point out that the digital panopticon is also a banopticon.
A banopticon. B-A-N. Because it doesn't just watch everyone equally.
It actively identifies and excludes or bans those who are deemed useless or hostile to the digital market.
And the mechanics of this exclusion are terrifying because they are silent.
If you are algorithmically categorized as waste, you aren't put in a physical prison. You just slowly disappear from the optimal version of society.
You won't see the same premium credit card offers.
Or the same high-paying job advertisements, or the same prime real estate listings as a shooting star.
The algorithm quietly excludes you from participating fully in the economy, and you never even see the invisible wall that blocked you.
It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of poverty and exclusion. You are denied opportunities based on predictive analytics, which ensures you remain in a lower tier.
Which in turn justifies the algorithm's initial categorization.
It closely resembles a form of digital feudalism.
Digital feudalism, yeah, I like that analogy.
We are the serfs, right? We are given this free digital land, the social media platforms, the search engines to inhabit. We plow the fields with our constant posts, our photos, our interpersonal relationships, our location data.
And then the feudal lords, the massive tech monopolies, return to harvest our data for pure profit.
But they don't just sell it. They use that very harvest to train the algorithms that will manipulate our future choices. We are literally farming our own subjugation.
And that structural dynamic, the algorithm feeding us back a curated version of reality based on our own harvested data, has profound implications.
Not just for economics, but for how we interact with other human beings.
This leads to one of Han's most profound and, honestly, melancholic critiques.
The disappearance of the other.
Yes, the hell the same.
If the algorithms are constantly designed to feed us what we already like, what we already agree with, what already feels comfortable to us, what happens to our ability to encounter anything genuinely new?
The capacity for genuine encounter begins to atrophy.
Because digital communication, as governed by profit-driven algorithms, acts entirely as a mirror.
The algorithm's primary goal is engagement.
Yeah.
The easiest way to keep you engaged is to reflect your own beliefs and desires back to you.
We curate our feeds to eliminate dissenting opinions. We only seek validation of our existing egos.
Han argues that the philosophical concept of the person, the idea, or the experience that is genuinely alien, that challenges our worldview.
That possesses a mystery we cannot easily comprehend.
Yes, that other is disappearing from our daily lives.
Everything is reduced to a consumable commodity, something that is identical or at least adjacent to what we already know.
Right.
But I want to challenge this idea of the other disappearing for a second, especially when it comes to human connection and romance.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because Han writes extensively about the agony of eros, the death of genuine romantic love in the digital age.
He does.
But structurally, if you look at a dating app like Tinder, it gives you immediate access to tens of thousands of people you would never ever cross paths with in your physical life.
That's true.
You aren't limited to the people in your small town or your workplace anymore. Doesn't the digital architecture radically increase your exposure to the other?
Well, it undeniably increases your exposure to other human bodies.
Yeah.
To a higher volume of potential partners. But Han would argue it drastically reduces your exposure to the philosophical other.
How so?
The mechanism of the dating app itself destroys the mystery required for eros. When you use a dating app, how do you interact with that vast pool of people?
Well, I mean, you filter them, you set parameters.
Precisely. You approach this vast pool of humanity using the logic of a consumer in a supermarket. You apply algorithmic filters, height, age, educational background, political affiliation, zip code, income bracket.
We actively eliminate any friction, any unpredictability, any fundamental difference before we even say hello.
You are not looking for an other to challenge you. You are looking for a customized reflection of your own preferences. You are looking for the same.
We treat potential romantic partners like a customized order on a food delivery app.
Yes.
We want all the specifications met before we commit time to the interaction.
And that is the death of eros. Genuine love, true intimacy, absolutely requires an encounter with a mystery.
It requires a vulnerability, a surrender of control to someone who cannot be completely understood or reduced to a list of 15 data points on a digital profile.
Love is transformative precisely because it is unpredictable and often uncomfortable.
But the Transparency Society hates mystery.
And the Achievement Society hates inefficiency. Unpredictability is inefficient.
So true. Total communication, the demand that everything be known, categorized, and visible immediately leaves no room for the gradual, unpredictable, and sometimes painful unfolding of a real relationship.
Intimacy inherently requires a protected space, a hiddenness.
The transparency society drags intimacy out into the glaring light of data.
We trade the transformative, risky power of eros for the safe, frictionless, optimized consumption of the same.
We want the dopamine hit of a match without the terrifying risk of an actual vulnerable encounter.
It's a sad reality.
It really is. Okay, so let's assess the landscape here.
Let's do a recap.
We are trapped in a digital panopticon of our own making. We are exhausted by our own infinite ambition because we've internalized the whip of the achievement society. We are quietly sorted and labeled as data points by digital feudal lords.
Waste or shooting stars.
Right. And we are losing the ability to fall in love because algorithms have smoothed out all the beautiful, messy friction of human existence.
That sums it up.
The invisible dictatorship of psychopolitics feels impenetrable because it operates through our own desires. So how do we escape this?
How do we fight back?
Yeah, how do we mount any sort of resistance when the prison is in our own minds?
Han actually does offer a path forward, a philosophy of contemplative resistance.
Okay, good. Some hope.
But the first step of this resistance requires entirely rejecting the solutions that our current society tries to sell us.
Right, because my immediate instinct, like a good subject of the achievement society, is to look for a tool to fix the problem.
Yeah.
I think I need an app to limit my screen time, or I need to do a 10-minute corporate mindfulness meditation between Zoom calls so I can lower my cortisol and get back to answering emails faster.
And Han would argue that those reactions are just more tools of psychopolitics.
Wait, mindfulness is psychopolitics.
Mindfulness, as it is often packaged in the corporate world, is deeply cynical. It is usually just a methodology to optimize yourself to work harder without having a nervous breakdown.
Oh, wow. It is self-exploitation dressed up as self-care.
Exactly. It doesn't challenge the infinite demand of can. It just helps you endure it a little longer.
So what is the actual solution then?
True resistance requires a radical shift in how we relate to time, to productivity, and to ourselves. Han advocates first and foremost for reclaiming what he calls deep boredom.
Deep boredom. That sounds completely counterintuitive.
I know it does.
I mean, boredom feels awful. If I'm bored, it means I'm not achieving anything. It means I'm wasting time. Why would I intentionally seek out boredom?
To understand the value here, we have to distinguish between shallow boredom and deep boredom.
Okay, what's the difference?
Shallow boredom is what you feel when you are restless. It is the anxiety of understimulation.
It's that itching craving for the next digital stimulus, the next notification, the next dopamine hit.
Yes. Shallow boredom is the exact feeling that drives you to pull your smartphone out of your pocket while you are waiting in line for coffee for 30 seconds.
It's the discomfort of the withdrawal from the digital network.
Exactly. But deep boredom is entirely different. Deep boredom is a contemplative space.
A contemplative space.
It is a profound, unstructured quiet. It is the state of mind that occurs when you push through that initial restless withdrawal and allow yourself to simply exist without external input.
I think I get it. It's the feeling of staring out the window on a long train ride with no music playing, no podcast on, no book to read, just watching the landscape pass by.
Perfect example. In that state of deep boredom, the brain fundamentally shifts its operating mode.
It stops reacting to external stimuli and begins to wander.
Han argues that this unstructured wandering is the vital soil where true creativity, original thought, and genuine self-discovery grow.
Because a constantly stimulated mind cannot have an original thought. It can only react to the thoughts of others.
Spot on. When you allow yourself to be deeply bored, you actively step off the endless treadmill of achievement.
You stop producing, you stop consuming, you stop optimizing, and you start simply being.
It's a rebellion of non-participation.
I love that. And alongside deep boredom, Han emphasizes a concept that directly combats the digital panopticon.
Right?
Yes, the right to intransparency.
The right to intransparency. I love the quote from the Austrian writer Dieter Hanke that Han uses to illustrate this point.
Oh, sure.
He says, "I live off what others don't know about me."
I live off what others don't know about me. It is a profound and radical statement in today's context.
It really is. In a society that demands we confess everything to the digital network, keeping a secret is a revolutionary act.
We have been conditioned to believe that privacy is only necessary if you are hiding wrongdoing. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear.
But that is a lie, engineered to harvest your data. Privacy is the essential incubator for the human soul.
Because there are thoughts, there are emotions, there are internal transformations that are so fragile they can only happen in the dark.
away from the scrutinizing, quantifying gaze of the public and the algorithm.
If we drag every nascent thought out into the light of social media for immediate feedback, we kill it before it can fully form.
We have to refuse to denude our souls for digital metrics.
The resistance requires embracing the uncalculable.
Yes, we have to consciously step away from the digital mirror that only shows us what we already agree with.
We have to learn to value the unoptimized, the inefficient, the beautifully unpredictable aspects of human connection.
The sacred parts of human life, the mysteries of love and identity, simply cannot survive total visibility.
If we want to truly live as autonomous human beings, rather than as predictable data points, we have to fiercely protect the parts of ourselves that cannot be measured.
That is the core of Han's message.
This has been an intense, perspective-shifting journey today. Let's synthesize what we've uncovered for everyone listening.
There's a lot to take in.
We've examined how the visible, physical walls of the disciplinary society were replaced by the invisible, internalized whip of "you can."
We've seen how this infinite mandate for achievement has driven us into a relentless cycle of self-exploitation,
leading to the profound neuronal burnout that defines our modern era.
You've explored the architecture of the digital Panopticon, realizing that our smartphones serve as voluntary tracking bracelets.
Digital rosaries, right?
In a transparent society that we actively, eagerly help construct.
We've uncovered the chilling mechanics of psychopolitics, where big data and algorithms don't just observe us, but predict and manage our desires.
Silently sorting us into categories of value while destroying our capacity for genuine, mysterious human connection.
The overarching lesson here seems to be that the transition from coercion to endless possibility was a brilliant, devastating trick of power.
It replaced the heavy iron chains of external control with the invisible, silky threads of our own desires.
And breaking those threads doesn't require a new app or a productivity hack.
It requires a profound, fundamental shift in our consciousness and our relationship to time.
It requires the courage to stop moving. I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over today as you go back out into the world or as you look at that blank Sunday calendar. The algorithms that run the infrastructure of our digital lives are desperate to categorize you.
They need to predict you.
They want to turn your complex, messy, contradictory identity into a reliable, frictionless data point so they can smoothly sell you back your own desires.
In a world that constantly demands you, brand, track, optimize, and expose every single inch of your life for a digital audience.
What if the most radical, powerful, and liberating thing you can do today is to have the courage to remain an absolute, impenetrable mystery to the algorithm?